Started going through the roll call. I'm Sean Holland and I am here. Mr. Downey here. Mr. Olds online.
This is Yemi. I'm sitting in for him.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Bowen here. And Ms. Zelatel is join us later, I understand. Yeah. Okay. So we have a quorum with 4 of the 5 members. Aaron, could you help us out with the public involvement announcement, please?
Of course. AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by staff or consultants. Then the committee is given an opportunity to discuss the item. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you are not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Do we have approval of the agenda?
I'd like to move to change the order of the day.
Seconded.
So what I'd like to do is maybe take up one of the informational items first, just to get that out of the way for the meeting, and also to give members all the time more time to join the meeting. So perhaps to take that safety campaign update first, and then go to the discussion around the action items.
Yes. So that would be after 4, we would do 6A and then move on to 5 for the action items and keep 6B for after the action items.
We might also want to do the glossary because the safety campaign and the glossary are not going to take a lot of time. So if we're looking for a longer period of time for her to get here, we may want to do both of the informational items just as recommendation.
I think I timed action item 5A at 1 hour and 45 minutes for the task. So I hope we can do better than that. But yeah, and I think I got a second for that change. So we're going to go, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5 as far as the agenda items go. Are there any objections to adopting the agenda? Hearing none, the modified agenda is approved. For agenda item number 4, we have the meeting minutes from the September 19th, 2024 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
By Dr. Boland. We have a second.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Graham. Are there any changes or discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. Are there any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the September 19th, 2024 minutes are approved. So we are skipping down to agenda item number 6, project and plan updates. A is the AMATS safety campaign update.
Yes, sir. Just a second. I'm doing notes while Lori is out as well. So it's triple duty today. Okay, everybody, I just wanted to give a quick update to you all on where we're at with the AMATS non-motorized safety campaign. So we began this campaign as a pilot project in 2021 and have continued moving it forward very successfully. So AMATS works with the traffic engineering department at the municipality of Anchorage, who works with the Center for Safe Alaskans. So there's multiple layers involved with this campaign. Look, do you have any? Oh, you have pictures. So some of the things that we're doing are handing out reflective tape. I actually had little placards to bring you, but I forgot to bring them today, and we'll see them on the screen. Or we're doing outreach efforts like on the buses. So here, eyes up, phone down. It's just a heads up to give people kind of a friendly reminder that, you know, put your phone down while you're driving and pay attention as you're driving. If you want to go to the next one real quick. So these are the interior of the bus. So the idea here is really just talk about be seen, be aware, and be predictable. Predictability is a great way to ensure that everybody stays safe. So don't just jet out in the middle of traffic, or don't immediately turn without using your turn signal. Give everybody an idea of what you're doing as time goes on. So while this is non-motorized focused, we recognize that it's good to do outreach and education for all users of the transportations. So education outreach in the 16 months since mid 2023. The CSA has provided education and safety materials to 60 locations and events. 86% of these directly supporting our underserved communities. That was one of the big focus we asked the campaign to look at, is the underserved low-income populations, to try and get out as much help as possible there. Education has been provided for more than 4,500 people with a distribution of approximately 10,000 safety devices and materials, including reflective tape, helmets, cleats, hats, bike bells, reflective poles, bike lights, and reflective stickers. CSA has also, and this is kind of cool, recruited some volunteer groups to help knit hats for at-risk children, and also to add in reflective thread as part of that. So those hats have been given out as well. And we have a lot of pictures and things that I probably should be showing on the screen as I'm doing this. Second, let me pop it up so you can see it. Okay. Look, would you be able to zoom in on that one on the computer, please? Yeah, with just the mouse on that one, you might be able to zoom in. If not, I will. Let me see if this works. Okay, there we go. So just giving you some ideas of some of the things that are being handed out and some of the work that's being done. These are like the reflective cleats. These are the helmets that are being given out to the children. And then kind of the outreach being done. These are some examples of the knitted caps that are being put together with the reflective material through there. AMATS also has hats, reflective hats that we've been handing out. If you've seen our very bright fluorescent hats that we've been handing out. These are the various events that have been happening that people have been attending, pretty successful attendance, I have to say. We also are doing distribution of reflective tape through mail order. So 18,000 pieces have been given out through the mail, in addition to everything else that is being given out. Recognize this is really focused within the AMATS boundary because of our funding limitations. So we're not really talking Indian bird and gird here, unfortunately. But it's really trying to get it into the hands of the vulnerable road users. So you can see here some more advertisements that we've been doing on the buses. So we do have media outreach, and then we're continuing on. So a couple things about the continuing effort. We're looking at seeing if the funding is eligible to help with scholarships to give out to students for driver's education. I'm not used to it, but apparently driver's education is not free in our community here. It is something you have to pay for, and it is a little expensive. And it's hard for a lot of individuals to take it. So the idea is to see if the campaign can help fund school children, especially in lower income or underserved populations, the opportunity to take driver's education. We're also going to be looking for an increase of funding with the next TIP amendment. So you'll see that as part of TIP amendment number 3. I think maybe about $100,000 or so increase to expand this program, not only for the scholarships possibly, but also for other additional outreach efforts, and continued expansion of handing out reflective tape and other materials that you see here. Overall, in our view as staff, it's been a very successful campaign so far in terms of getting the outreach and getting the materials to individuals. We don't have any metrics at this point to see what kind of actual impact this is having in terms of how many lives it's saving. But I think to think of this as really just one piece of the puzzle that needs to be done, as everybody says, it's, education, engineering, all the other kind of stuff. So we're trying to do our part and hope we can continue funding it in the future. And that's all I had for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Are any questions or comments from the committee for Aaron? Not seeing or hearing any. Any comments from the public? Not seeing any. So thanks again, Aaron. On to agenda item 6B, which is a glossary for AMATS.
Yes. Okay. I'll speak a little slower. Time is going by way quicker than I anticipated. So, as we've heard over the years, I'm sharing my screen, so don't. AMATS is pretty complicated in everything that we do. And I think one of the things that makes AMATS so complicated is the number of acronyms we use. We've heard from policy committee members as well as members of the public that we're so acronym heavy that it's often hard for people to follow along with what we do. So Christine, who is not here today, has been working on developing a glossary for AMATS. And the idea behind this is to spell out some of the more commonly used things that we refer to on a regular basis and say what it is, and then also tie a smaller or easier to understand term to it. So for example, for our UPWP, which is one of the items on here today, instead of saying UPWP, we just say work program. So people know, okay, you're talking about the UPWP. There'll be instances when we talk about it in its acronym, but in general, try and just use simple language. The tip, instead of the tip, we just say funding program. And then, MTP, we just say transportation plan or long range plan. We haven't really worked out the exact terminology there. And the idea is to just try and make it a little bit easier for everybody to follow along and to where I don't have to spell out the acronyms every single time I mention them to everybody. And this is just one of many things that we'll be working on over the time to make it a little easier for public and for the committee members. So we have a glossary up here, and you can see, I don't want to make anyone sick and scroll through it too fast, but you can see that we're putting kind of commonly used terms up here and defining them. And then as we go along, we're going to attach an easier to use term with it. So it's all public, it's all available for everybody to use on a regular basis. Hand in hand with what we're doing here is something I'll talk about a little later, but mention we are looking at doing educational or informational videos about AMATS, so AMATS 101, that we can make available to public and committee members, especially new committee members, so they can watch it real quick and just get a brief snapshot of what is AMATS, and try and do it in a little bit easier to understand way than using all of the acronyms like MPO, AQ, that kind of stuff. So this is the start of this, and I'm sure you'll see more as we continue working on our public participation plan update that hopefully will come back in a couple of, or come to you in a couple of months. That's all I had. Thank you.
Aaron, any questions or comments from the committee for Aaron on the glossary?
Thank you. Yeah, I know I'm on a little campaign against acronyms, so appreciate it. Very much appreciate it. I do think it makes a meaningful difference for the general public. I know I even catch myself using the acronyms. The elephant in the room is also AMATS, which is itself an acronym, right? So I don't know what it would take to change our name or what the value would be, but anyway, I'll just say thank you, Aaron, and thanks to Christine for putting in so much work.
Thank you.
What else? And this is a standalone document, right?
Yeah, this is something we're just putting on our website. The idea here is just to get feedback from everybody, what's working, what's not working, and it's something we'll continually update. So it's not it's a living document, basically.
Are there any comments from the public on the glossary? I'm not seeing any.
We do have one.
Oh, we do.
Mike
Okay.
Edgington.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you to that, and I'm going to be bookmarking it now. Thank you.
Mr. Edgington. Any others? Okay, no, I'm not seeing any others. Any other further project or plan updates?
No, sir.
No, okay, thank you. I know it's a order after.
So I think we'll have, if it's okay, Assemblymember Littlefield switch out as the alternate.
Okay,
And
as long as that's.
sir.
Do we need to do anything procedurally?
No, we can just note that he's filling in for Ms. Zolotel. Oops, sorry. As he the designated alternate in his switch, and for this very reason. Thank you.
Yes, record shows at 1:15. Mr. Littlefield joined us. And we're on to action item 5A, which is the 2050 MTP Amendment number 1 direction memo. Aaron.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So as you know, some changes have happened with the STIP recently where a project, the Safer Seward Highway, received a cost increase over the life of the project. And as part of our requirement with our MTP is when we have cost increase for projects that are included in the MTP, we have to demonstrate fiscal constraint. So staff put together a work session for the committee members, for the TAC and PC members to hear a presentation from the Safer Seward Highway project team, and also give an update from DOT and PF on how they are going to address the cost increase for the project. At that meeting, it was noted that the cost will be covered by additional funds that are not historically brought into the AMATS area that will be used to cover the project cost. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what they're saying is that projects that are currently identified in the MTP with DOT federal funding will not be impacted by this cost increase. And so staff is looking for the policy committee's direction on how to move forward on this MTP amendment. And in the memo, there's some options. Just trying to give you guys something to work with. These are not an exhaustive list of options, but move forward with the project based on the recommendation by DOT and PF. And so update the MTP accordingly is one option. Another option is to remove it from the MTP. And then another option is to adjust the project scope to limit the size and impact of the project. So you can't build anything larger than a 2 or 3 lane. There are other options. Again, these are just some things so you can see as examples.
Is option three, I mean, we're in the NEPA process. Is option 3 really an option?
My understanding is yes, the NEPA document would have to account for this as part of it. What impact that would have on the project, I don't know. So this item came before the Technical Advisory Committee at their last meeting, as was noted. It was a lengthy discussion. I think they said hour and 45 minutes or so. It took up most of the meeting, so we did have to extend it. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of split decisions on various motions that were carried forward. Eventually, the Technical Advisory Committee did settle on a motion, and I'll go ahead and read it off to you. Amend to increase the project amount, so in the MTP, with the understanding that all DOT and PF funding within the AMATS area is not impacted. And they also would like to forward on to the project team comments as follows. And I realize there's an error on the memo. Project team should not be in quotes. I'm not saying anything nasty there. I just mistakenly didn't put the quote, the second quotation at the end of the sentence. So this whole next part I'm going to say is in quotes because this is direct quotes from the TAC. The project team will look at a lesser footprint without compromising the non-motorized improvements and ensure safety improvements and non-motorized improvements are moved forward quicker. A footprint reduction should be looked at through the entire corridor. So this motion passed 10 in favor, 1 abstaining. And staff also has a recommendation in here that we're just putting for informational purposes. Staff's recommending the project be removed from the 2850 MTP due to the cost, limited safety needs compared to other parts of Anchorage, and concerns over a 4-lane divided highway having negative impacts on the long-term safety of the corridor. So this item is before you all today for you to review and direct staff on how to move forward on the 2050 MTP Amendment 1. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Littlefield.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We have a problem with this whole project. It's moving forward and it's in the NTP. The problem is the cost involved with this. We need some concrete definitions that they're not going to affect the MTP, they're not going to affect the STIP, and we're not going to have our AMATS programs basically stonewalled by a project that's, going to take $260 million from our AMATS program. So we would like to see basically before anything moves forward with this, where they're getting the funding from and making sure that we're not going to have any of our projects, hampered by this project. I agree that this project is a good project. I like the idea. However, moving forward, I don't think that we can basically justify this without some assurances that it's not going to affect any of our projects moving forward.
Well, it doesn't affect the AMATS allocation regardless, right? This will be funding that's over and above our AMATS allocation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would only impact if there was an impact. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying if there is an impact, it would be to the DOT and PF funding that comes into our area, not the actual AMATS allocation that this committee decides every tip cycle. So the 50 million or so that come to AMATS for direct decision on.
So that funding could come from, well, it could come from multiple sources, could be from our statewide transportation improvement program through the National Highway NHPP. What's that stand for?
National Highway Performance Program,
Performance Program.
NHS, National Highway System funding.
Could come from that. Project's also going to pursue alternative funding methods such as grants and things of that nature. I don't know that right now that we can tell you exactly where that funding is going to come from. So I don't know that we can give any guarantee there, but so, and I'm going to think out loud, Aaron, will this committee get another shot at this when the project comes to be put in the tip?
So basically what's happening right now is we need to update the MTP in order to even put this project into the tip. Because we have to demonstrate that the MTP is still fiscally constrained with the cost increase. So they'll get a bite at the apple of putting it into the tip. But what we're asking for right now is a decision from the committee on how staff should move forward about the MTP side of things. So MTP first, then tip.
Yeah, and it's currently in the tip because it's currently funded, right? So the increase.
It is not in the tip. It was removed as part of Amendment 2 because we couldn't.
Right. Yeah.
It was showing the total cost in 1 year, and so there was some concerns over that, so it was removed.
Mm-hmm. And the construction of this piece is going to be well beyond the current tip.
Mm-hmm.
The only piece that would be in this tip is for the next design.
I believe so,
yeah.
But the reason it's the MTP is because we look 20. I think right now our current MTP is like 26 years out.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're looking at. The tip itself would only focus on what's going to be funded in the 4 years of the tip, which is right now just 25 and 26.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if any other. Yeah.
I have another question. So
Yeah.
after that conversation, if we're going to modify the MTP to be fiscally constrained, where are we going to find the extra money? I mean, I'm confused on where we're going to find the extra $200 million. That's my question. And then going forward, I like the way the process is going to go on this road. It's not going to be, one-time fix. It's going to be over several years, which makes sense. That's going to fiscally constrain us. Are we going to find money from other places, or are we going to be borrowing from the AMATS? Because if we're going to move forward with this, it's $262 million, if I'm correct.
We actually haven't got a confirmation on the cost, because when you look at the STIP that's posted right now, there are 2 sections that are within the AMATS boundary, which is mile point 114 to 118. The STIP's an error. It says 113 to 116. It's actually 14 to 18. And there are 2 phases that it's like one is 360 million, I believe, and the other is 150 million. So there's that. And then the project team at the work session said it was only 266 million within the AMATS boundaries. So either way, it's an increase that's significant enough that has to be looked at.
The draft letter that I have to you that hasn't been sent yet, to my knowledge, is a total of 240. Okay, 240. Yeah.
And so the idea here is, the reason we're having this discussion is typically what would happen is if a project cost increased, you would be kind of looking at your fiscal constraint in the MTP and say, okay, we had an increase of 50 million. Are there projects that we have to move out to address that and make room and make it equal again? And what we're saying is, DOT, how are you going to pay for it? And they're saying, you don't have to change anything in your MTP. You're bringing money from outside your historically seen revenue amounts to match that project cost increase. So nothing will be impacted here, and they're going to bring extra funds. Typically, those funds would come from other regions, discretionary grants, other regions. When I mean that, like Matsu, Kenai, Fairbanks, other locations, or other projects, I guess, that would have that NHS funding outside of the AMATS area.
And I mean, that's pretty common, right? So if you think about any major project that we built on the Glen or the Seward, it didn't come out of, I mean, that's kind of over and above. We certainly have high years and low years to create that average, right? So, I mean, yeah, you could walk down both of those highways and with any major project there, and it doesn't come out of the AMATS allocation. It comes out of typically STIP funding. There's some state funding.
And so that's what we're asking for confirmation from DOT. It's how is it going to be addressed? And then it's up to you guys to say we agree or we don't agree or we partially agree, whatever you guys decide. And that's what kind of what we're asking for today.
Is it okay if I ask Ben? Ben, is there any other way to articulate that besides what I attempted to do?
No, I think through the chair, the intent is to program with our STIP funding. But the other thing to consider is that over the course of a transportation bill, there's additional funding that comes in. And so our National Highway Performance Program funding, the NHPP, STBG, our allocations increase every year with the transportation bill. So we are anticipating additional funding in the next fiscal year. And so over the course of time, we're seeing more federal funding coming in. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're robbing from one other area or one region. It could just be that this additional funding is coming in through the federal system. So there's multiple ways that this can be funded, but it is a balancing act within the STIP of programming all the funding. That's the intent here, is to use that funding to program this additional project, MTP.
And of course, we had a working group meeting on that project. It's a couple of weeks ago, maybe. Schedule is a draft environmental assessment in the first quarter of next year with a decisional document by mid to late summer. So to keep the project moving, we would need to include this funding in the MTP so that it can be included in the TIP amendment so that we can continue on schedule.
I have a question. Thanks. Yeah, I guess, so to me, this seems really speculative. Like there might be outside money above and beyond. So I guess why not wait until, if you're going to have that funding before amending our long-range transportation plan? And then like, how common is this to try to amend an MPO's long-range transportation plan before the funding is identified? Is this like normal practice? And I guess my third question would be around capacity. We have things that have already been pushed out on the TIP that I think, are major safety priorities within, largely within the Anchorage, within the AMATS boundary. And, for instance, this is a different topic, but I think sort of related, the recent realization that there's going to be a feasibility study around the Knik Arm Tunnel. But we already have an AC couplet corridor study programmed on the TIP that got pushed out to 2027 because DOT doesn't have enough capacity to do that corridor study at this time. So I just feel like we have these mega projects that we want to do and explore, but local priorities are already being pushed off into the future. So even if the funding is left intact and we're still a fiscally constrained MTP and TIP, how would this project moving forward impact other projects that are already prioritized in our transportation plans?
Well, I think any of that funding out 26 years is a little bit speculative. It's based on historical average. And it's a state project, right? I mean, it's within the municipality of Anchorage. 87% of it is outside of the AMATS boundary. But it's the only route that we have to the Kenai Peninsula. It's a safety corridor, and it has been for 20 years. And again, it's a program of projects. It's not like we're going to go out and spend that $1.3 billion in one shot. It's going to be broken up into smaller, more affordable chunks. At this point, I can't tell you what those chunks are because that work hasn't been done. We haven't made it through the NEPA process.
But we don't know where the funding is coming from at this time, any of it.
Well, I mean, we could make a speculation like we speculate for any of that funding that's coming. I mean, none of that funding over the next 30 years is guaranteed in the MTP. And again, it's very common. You look at any major project that we've built on the Seward to Glen Highway, and that's money that's injected, or different funding types that are injected into.
Then how about the capacity question?
HDR is the consultant that's working on this, and very little central region staff input for that project in particular. We also have I don't know, there's probably a 90% design that this corridor has been studied for a very long time. We have a corridor, I forget what it's called, whether it's a reconnaissance study or something that looks at the whole corridor from Anchorage to Girdwood. Tried several times to build a project, a state-funded project at Windy Corner. They got extended from Windy Corner to Rainbow. So there's been a ton of work that's already been done on this corridor. And yeah, we built all the easy parts. It's time to build part of the hard parts there.
Yeah, but there's a ton of work that's been done on the Gamble and Ingra corridor too, and that hasn't been rebuilt either. And so
there's projects in the MTP for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have a PEL there that's going to spill out some more projects here within, I don't know, a few months.
Okay.
Just to piggyback on Dr. Volan here, is it imperative that this passes now, or can we wait till next meeting? Because I'm just a little apprehensive on, I understand that you guys have the anticipation of funding. However, I don't know if it's going to come to fruition, and we're not going to get it. So, and then all of our other projects, including the projects that have been worked on that aren't getting funded, that won't go forward because this project will take precedence. So I'm a little concerned.
Not sure which projects those are, but and we're going to be able to make a commitment any more in a month than we are today. Is about where exactly that funding is coming from. I mentioned before that the tip takes us what, 6 to 8 months. I mean, I don't remember what the last one took us, but it's a long time.
It's 4 months for the AMATS process, and then another 2 to 3 months for the state process.
So yeah, for us to keep that project on schedule, we need to move forward with something today. Because it still has to go into the tip, right?
Yes, our plan here is depending on the decision today, and if there are other changes, we're wanting to do the MTP and tip together to not have delays. So the idea would be do the MTP first on the agendas and everything, and then have the tip come along right behind it.
Because ideally we'd have the tip at least a draft tip at the December meetings.
We won't have it until January at this point.
Until January. What's the holdup on that?
DOT giving me the project list of any projects they want added to the tip that I've been asking for 6 months. So waiting to hear on that, and depending on what those projects are, and they have to identify the funding as well, which has been a struggle in the STIP. It'll impact whether we have to do an air quality conformity determination and interagency consultation process, which takes us 3 weeks to get done. And so that's what's pushed us into January at this point.
Any more discussion? Mr. Downing.
I wonder, I think as, Gamble's come up, and I'm wondering why the Fairview project went through a PEL, but this one did not. Sort of I think we've been hearing a lot of sort of public concerns about the cost and about the design. So I'm wondering, is that an option for getting more public feedback on this process so we can make sure it's meaningfully addressing safety and is a cost-effective solution? I'm wondering if that is a potential path forward.
Yeah. I don't think a PEL, personally don't think a PEL helps us. I think we spent a lot of money on studying that corridor already. There'll certainly be more opportunity for public involvement. There has been a lot already. When the environmental assessment draft is published, that'll be a good opportunity for the public to weigh in on different concepts. Again, I would rely on experts to recommend the concepts that we use for the corridor. But yeah, I don't think a PEL necessarily helps us. And like I say, we've spent a lot of money on studying that corridor, and I don't think more money on planning it. I don't think that's what the public wants us to do.
Right. I think what maybe I'm reacting to here is it feels a little bit like we've got a choice of we approve a 4-lane divided highway that costs minimum of $1.4 to $5 billion versus we axe the total project and we ruin this whole thing. And because it is an important project, and I guess Member Littlefield said, like, it is the critical connectivity to the Kenai, it's important to Anchorage, it's important to the state. So just be nice to sort of find a way to not have to choose between those two options.
And when that environmental assessment is published, that'll give people the opportunity to comment on the different cross sections there. It's not a final decision until the record of decision is issued, which is late summer. So that any public input will certainly be considered. And Mr. Dr. Moore.
Yeah, is it possible to wait until after that environmental assessment is complete and have sort of that knowledge before adding that project to the MTP?
I mean, not keep us on our current schedule, right? Because it's not going to make it into the tip and time.
But it could make it into the next tip. I mean, what is the current, I guess, what's the urgency is my question.
The urgency, it's a safety corridor. That we have fatalities on that highway every year. We had one just this summer. A pedestrian got killed.
Okay.
We just retired 4 miles of safety corridor up on Connect Goose Bay this year. So we're down to a piece of that, one on the Sterling, and then this, which I think is the oldest on the Seward Highway. You know, it's a safety corridor because it has a higher than average rate of fatality, fatal and serious injury crashes. So there's a reason behind the project.
Another process question. I wondered, is this, has this gone for Planning and Zoning Commission review? I think someone had flagged for us, like Title 2103-190 generally requires designs to go to the Planning and Zoning. Is that something that happens in the next step after NEPA, or is that something that, I know there's been a little bit of confusion about when that happens. Is that, will that, or has that in the works?
I don't know that that's happened yet. I don't know if any of my DOT folks can help me out with that. I don't think it's gone in front of planning. So Luke.
So Luke Boland, DOT pre-construction engineer. I know we've talked about the timing of that in some of the discussions. I haven't been as close to this project. We do have members from the project team. Information on when that would happen, or if that has already occurred. I don't know if I can defer. I defer.
You defer if you want. I got it.
Okay. So I guess I'll kind of leave an awkward silence here for anybody to speak up.
Yeah, I know. Good idea. Well, put those guys on the spot. I don't know if they have the answer or not. But.
This is Morgan Miller with HDR, and we have gone through the process with planning and zoning. They recommended coming back later. We kind of did a preliminary presentation to them. I don't recall exactly what that time frame is. We can get that information for you if you'd like, but it is the official presentation is a little bit later in the process.
Thanks, Morgan.
I could follow up. I guess I think sort of as a technical question, we finished the environmental review in Q1 2025. Are we locked into a design at that point? Will we have to go back and do a new NEPA analysis if it shifted from a 4-lane project to a different project? If there is meaningful community feedback, would we have to redo the NEPA process?
No. If the impacts are less, the document has to be reevaluated at certain milestones within the delivery schedule for sure. But if we have the ultimate build is that 4-lane and we aren't going to go any bigger and increase any impacts, then you have to reevaluate the document, but it's not going to be a significant process if we start small and go bigger. We increase impacts. Okay, I get the nod from Ben, so okay. Does that answer the question?
That does, thank you. Yeah. And then, or I guess the following question is then at what decision will then that come back to AMATS, to this body, to make another decision on it after that point? Is there Or will that be, goes in the MTP or the long range plan, and then it goes in the, what are we calling it now? The funding plan,
Funding program.
the funding program. And we're gonna do that before the designs are finalized. So is there another chance for this body to review that, the design, and approve it or not approve it?
Design, the spending.
Yeah,
The
the
tip
spending.
and the tip amendments, I
Yeah.
would say that, yes.
There's really no mechanism for it to come back to the committee once it's in the MTP or the TIP. Once it's there, it's there.
Right.
Unless the committee wants to at a later date reassess it, whether it should stay in there or not.
But we're not gonna have any construction funding in this tip.
Yeah, if you guys don't, I mean, if you guys don't need it in the TIP right now, then there's no real rush to get it into the MTP either.
We need design funding in the tip to keep on schedule. But construction, this piece of the project is not gonna be built. I don't know when it's gonna be built, but it's not within the life of the current tip.
Okay, so that's a good, if it's not included in the MTP now, does that prohibit you guys from moving forward on the environmental document?
Other than we need the funding. Once we sign the decisional document, we'll have the next authority to proceed from the FHWA. We'll need that funding for design at that point.
Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I didn't have a misunderstanding of the timeline of what was needed right now. So yeah, there, in terms of AMATS staff process, there's nothing that triggers me having to bring it back to you all unless you direct me to at a later date after it's been added to the MTP and the TIP.
Okay.
Unless a significant cost increase happens like this go around, then I would flag that again and bring it back to you all. But if that doesn't happen, then we'll just be involved as part of any other stakeholder in the process.
Yeah. So I kind of want to continue on the same thread just because I want to know if this is added, realistically, how much input will this body have into whatever the finally adopted design is? Because my experience on this body, having been on AMATS for, I think, over a year now, I don't know how long I've been on the policy committee, is that it's very difficult to delete or right size highway expansion projects. It took us many months of conversations on the Seward Highway reconstruction phase 2, Diamond to O'Malley, to try to get that right size project, and there's a conversation about phasing it in. And I still don't think that one is dead. I think it's potentially going to happen in parts and pieces going forward. Who knows? And so, I guess I do want some clarity around. We add this to the MTP. How does the policy committee get to amend the design?
I don't know that the policy committee should amend the design.
Yeah. If I might maybe rephrase, or not rephrase, but what I would share a similar concern, maybe less. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm not trying to determine the design. But there is a question of the money, right? And how much resources are going to this project, and what are the alternatives, and what is the cost of those, and what is the actual safety improvement of the 4-lane design? I think those are questions this committee has the appropriate role to consider.
Well, I suppose it would just be the spending on the 13% of the alignment or whatever it is that when it comes to construction funding. I suppose that's the next input that this group would have.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak on my experience, but historically, if there's concerns over a project, it basically is noted at the meeting and you move forward. There hasn't really been any meaningful engagement with the committees because the kind of engagement you guys are talking about should have already been done at this point. We shouldn't be at an almost finished NEPA process and hearing from the committees, we have concerns about the size and cost of this project. That should have already been done. And I know staff is on the project team, but when I raise concerns about it, don't worry about it. It'll be taken care of. So my answer to you all is you're probably not going to get an input process in future. your decision is the funding, and that's kind of it. Sorry, I'm just being honest.
I think we are circling a little bit here. As a point of order, do we now go, we'll have audience participation before we entertain motions, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
So.
Unless there's more questions.
Okay, to add on to this is a multi-year project. So are we going to be revisiting this for another amendment because the cost of doing business goes on and on, everything goes up? Are we looking at the 266 or 240 now? Excuse me, you corrected me. Thank you very much. Is it going to be 240 and that's all we're going to do? Or we're going to have to amend this in 5 years because it is going to take more than 5 years to do this project. I don't think we can. The state of Alaska could fund it, but I'm just wondering if we're going to be revisiting this again for another increase.
There's potential for that.
There's
Sure.
a potential. Okay.
There's potential for every project that's in the
Correct.
MTP.
Mhm.
But I don't know. We don't want to open that can of worms. Right?
No, we don't. Okay.
Any other comments from the committee? Seeing any? All right, so I can open it up to any comments from the public.
Hi, yes, Alexa from Bike Anchorage. I testified at the last committee meeting. Is it okay for me to speak again here?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Bike Anchorage has been part of the stakeholder group on the Seward Highway project for a while now. And in our capacity, you know, we've been trying to make sure that as this project is moving forward, it is as bike friendly as it can be. But I think that with the question that's before us right now, it is wise to take a step back and look at the broader context in which this project is going on. You know, it was mentioned earlier that this is a project of urgency because there are deaths along that highway, and that is true. But my understanding from the previous committee meeting was that there's an average of maybe 2 fatalities per year along this corridor of highway. Meanwhile, we've had 14 pedestrians lose their lives on Anchorage roads, including ones owned and controlled by DOT this year. So we really do have very serious safety concerns that need to be addressed. And frankly, this highway widening project is not the biggest one. So when we hear that, you know, we can continue on this project and we'll just rustle up more money to cover the overage, I find myself wondering how we can do that for the highway widening project. And we have this sort of get up and go, but we can't manage to do that same thing to make on-street changes where people are actively dying up to this very month in our city, and particularly on roads that are, well, not in the colloquial sense a highway, but are part of the national highway system and would therefore theoretically still be eligible for the same pots of funding. So our comment here really is just to try to reframe this conversation and think about whether this is the best allocation of money, of people's time and energy to effectively prevent more people from dying on our roads, because we have data, we know where these problems are happening, and it's not this section of the Seward Highway. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? State your name, please.
Mark Butler,
Thanks.
a North Star Community Council member. As is Mr. Downey. So clearly, it seems to me this is one of those projects that we'd love to have in Alaska. We'd love to have a better highway between all our cities. And I, as an Anchorage person living in North Star area, would love to have a better road to Kenai, a better road to Talkeetna, and so forth. But clearly, we have roads within Anchorage, smaller ones like Fireway Lane and so forth, that, and especially the Ingra Gamble corridor, that are huge need for fixing, and seem to me to be a much higher priority than fixing the road south towards Kenai. So I don't understand why we would have this project in there. I understand the need because of safety, but we have huge safety needs in Fairview and so forth. So I would rather see, I don't know how it works, I'd rather see money put in project commitment, staff time to be put towards that.
Thanks. I guess I'd just point out that there are projects in the MTP Metropolitan Transportation Plan for Ingram and Gamble now. And, we have that planning environmental linkage that will spawn more projects. So those projects are also in the MTP.
My understanding, there's some initial projects and small chunks, and that's great. That's all good, but this is a big project here, and it seems to me that we got to fix Anchorage first. To use a colloquialism of the incoming president, fix America first. This is a chance to fix Anchorage first, and then figure out how we can expand those connecting roads out of Anchorage. Thank you.
Anybody else?
There's some people online.
Yeah.
The first person is the 907-227-6885, please. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the next person. If you are muted and you're on the phone, you can press *6 to unmute. Okay, they went away, or they lowered their hands. Okay, Mike Edgington is the next one on the list.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Hello.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Heard you, Mike. Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to actually one quick comment on the previous speaker. I think they said this project isn't within Anchorage. It is entirely within the municipality of Anchorage. I'm a frequent user. I live in Girdwood. I'm a board member on Girdwood Board of Supervisors. This is the road I use to go to every one of these kind of meetings that I attend in person, as I will be tomorrow. So it is within Anchorage, although obviously the majority of it is not within the AMATS area. I think I have similar concerns. A member of the Girdwood Board of Supervisors was on the stakeholder committee, and my understanding from talking to them is there was a lot of detailed information which was deferred, and we expect to hear in the future, and I have not heard that yet. So there's a lot of details of the design which will influence, I think, how our community and how the how this project will affect Anchorage as a whole. And it does seem that a lot of the sort of major commitments are being made before a lot of the details are available. So I think my general position would be I see benefit in some delay before hard commitments are made until we really know what we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edgerton.
Next one is Emily Weiser.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my name is Emily Weiser. I'm a resident of Airport Heights. I'm speaking for myself today. I share concerns that were voiced by the previous testifiers. I agree that there's pretty clear priorities on other roads if we're talking about safety and funding, and if we get additional funding, or if we're seeking additional funding, where that would be more effectively placed, which would be on those arterial roads in the Anchorage Bowl that have much higher fatality rates than this project corridor. I also share some concerns that were voiced earlier about where the funding is going to come from, and without any kind of commitment or even indication of where that's going to be coming from, I do worry that this will end up taking away from other projects in Anchorage or statewide on the DOT National Highway System. I think I would listen to the Technical Advisory Committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and I think they had requested assurance in writing from DOT about that this would be additional funding. So I am probably not in a position to know if that came through, but if it hasn't, maybe that's something this committee might want to consider. And then finally, just a note on, we've talked a lot about the design of the project and how committee members have expressed they didn't have a chance to weigh in on that. And to me, I see a distinction between the scope of the project and the design. And I would suggest that if DOT would like...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
3 minutes are up. I forgot to tell you, you only had 3 minutes, but sorry. but thank you.
All right, thank you.
Um,
Sorry, let me see if there's anyone else.
Anybody else?
No other hands
Yeah.
are raised.
Am I
Oh.
unmuted?
Yes, it was the number from before.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, we can hear
Yeah.
you, sir. State your name in 3
Thank you.
minutes,
Name-
please.
Thank you. My name is Jason Norris. I'm a resident of South Anchorage. I feel for my friend Mr. Edgington down in Girdwood. Obviously, we want, they're part of the Muni too, and we want to have safe ingress and egress and emergency services for them. A lot of times it's been said many times in this meeting that, we studied this corridor, we studied it, and yet we still find ourselves lacking an answer, whether it be actually what is increasing safety or what is feasible within some real fiscal constraints. And it just feels like we're rushing headlong toward a 4-lane divided highway that may not cure the problem and may not be fiscally responsible. So as the board moves forward, or does the committee moves forward or not, I just ask that you take into account what's realistic and what is in the greatest good for the most folks, because as pointed out, we have fatalities going on a lot of roads throughout Anchorage and that are within this jurisdiction. So just ask you to take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. I don't see anybody else online.
No, sir. Nobody else.
And I'm not sure, I don't think this draft letter has been sent to you, Aaron, yet, but I guess just a highlight. It says the funding request shown above is additional revenue in the MPA. The DOT is committing, in addition to regular AMATS program funding for the Seward Highway 98.5 to 118 project, and constitutes an increase to the funding available towards fiscal constraint. Anyway. I think I'm looking for a motion.
Okay, I'm going to move to remove the project from the MTP for the reasons detailed in the AMAT staff recommendation.
Seconded.
Yeah, so I could just speak to the motion.
Sure.
So I think for a number of reasons, including those lined out in the staff recommendation, it is premature to add this project to the MTP. Lack of clarity around funding, where that would come from. I think clearly from the public testimony that we've heard today that this is not a priority for Anchorage residents, that they would rather see other roads be upgraded in terms of safety within the AMATS boundary. So this is not a forever no to me, but I think that this is not the time to add this to our fiscally constrained MTP.
Comments? We're not adding it, right? It's already in there. We're just adding.
It'd be updating the fiscal assumptions, yeah.
Yeah.
Could we clarify what the motion is?
Yeah, to remove this project from the MTP.
To remove it, okay.
So that'd be option 2 in the memo.
I'll put that to vote.
What?
No,
If I may.
please.
Yeah, I think that does feel like it doesn't have to be a forever decision to remove it from the MTP. But I wonder if there's any appetite for delaying this decision, potentially getting more information from the environmental assessment and then coming back later.
And if you're asking me, what I'm going to support is what the TAC supported. And, we will have another opportunity to revisit public involvement when the environmental assessment is in draft form. The 4-lane, to my knowledge, is not a done deal. That's will be part of the NEPA decision. Not sure if that helps answer that question or not, but and no, I mean, I wouldn't support delaying it because I want to maintain our current schedule.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we talked about this at length, so maybe just to point, I'd like to preserve this body's ability to weigh in on the ultimate cost and design and choices, policy priorities on that road. So I think for that reason, I'm likely to support the motion.
So we put it to vote then. Mr. Leamy, do you have a vote?
My vote is to go with the recommendation from the Technical Advisory Committee to have the project included in MTP with the recommendations provided by the Advisory Committee.
I need a yes or a no on the motion, Yemi.
And the motion
yes
is to
or-
remove it.
Yeah, the motion,
No.
sorry.
No.
Okay, no,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry, we have to have the
Yes.
official yes or no's.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
that. Dr. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Littlefield,
Yes.
Mr. Downey,
Yes.
and I'll vote no as well. But the motion passes 3-2.
Okay, just as so what's gonna happen next is this will be back before the body in January for release to the public. It has to go through the process. So this is not a final, never gonna see, you're gonna actually see the MTP amendment itself. This was just giving staff what to do with that amendment. So it'll be back in January for release to the public. It'll go through the public process, including going to the assembly along with the tip and get those questions and answered. So we'll be back before you a couple of times before final vote of the MTP itself, if that makes sense.
So we're on to the next action item, which is the AMATS UPWP amendment.
That'll be me, sir. So really quick, we are looking at an amendment to the AMATS UPWP. So this is our work program. This is what directs staff.
Oh, sorry, could we do a brief at ease?
Oh,
A brief at ease?
Yeah.
Great.
If we need a quick break.
Yeah,
Okay.
just 3 minutes maybe.
Sure.
Great.
Is this in our glossary, Aaron? UPWP?
Yes, sir. It should be. I mean, before I answer, I actually should check and make sure. I don't actually know if our glossary is live yet. I think we wanted to run it by you first to make sure there was no immediate issues, but it may be on the front page.
That's the acronyms.
It's a spit.
Oh, they're still getting him? Oh,
No,
this
that's
is that week.
Yes, that happened
Well, it's been years. Had anything that bad.
twice so far this year.
And then up around Barrow getting hammered too. I would.
So didn't take it all the way out.
Yes.
Did you catch the typo?
No.
Yes.
Which one?
September, second line of the 5B. It's a new month.
Well, you know me. It's great and random new months for everybody.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome back, Mr. Downing. Yes, on to 5D, AMATS UPWP. UPWP is.
Our work program.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so before you is an amendment to the work program. So just to make sure we have background on it, so this is what directs staff into tasks that'll be done over the work program. It's a 2-year narrative. It's a 2-year budget. The first year is actuals. The second is estimated. And so the first year was FY24. The second year is FY25, which we are in now. We received a letter from the Department of Transportation on what our actuals or what our anticipated actuals are for FY25. And this amendment is to true up the numbers from the estimate to what we actually got. There's a little bit of a change for this one, so that's why you're seeing kind of a little bit of a difference in past MT or UPWP's work programs. So in the past, DOT applied obligation limitation to the federal funds that were given to AMATS for the work program. Limitation is on all federal funding. Basically, you only have so much that you can spend, authority to spend the amount they give you. So say you're given $1 million from the feds, you only have 90% of that you can actually use. It's a budgeting tool that's been around for a long time. And so past UPWs had that, so we wouldn't get our full amount. We'd only get 90% of it, which would leave like a cushion in case some overages happened or something like that, and it was available. Well, that cushion has grown pretty substantially over the years because that funding wasn't ever used. And so DOT, working with the MPOs, decided to go ahead and remove that obligation limitation and make 100% of the funding available to MPOs for these work programs. That means we received a pretty substantial increase of funding for FY25. I believe the other MPOs received a pretty substantial increase as well. And so this amendment reflects that increase. It's an increase of $588,799. So staff took a first run at this to allocate it based on the different tasks in the work program based on need. And I'm just going to do that really quickly of what those are. Task 120, which is for our funding funding program. So even I can't remember the exact terminology yet. I'm getting there. The idea here is $100,000 for contractual services to help with the development and implementation of an electronic version of the TIP. Right now, we use an Excel sheet for the TIP, and it works, but as we're moving into refining our processes in coordination with the Department of Transportation for the STIP, making sure everything speaks well between the two different programs, it's really come to my attention that we should be looking at a software tool, so some kind of cloud-based software to help with the development and implementation of our TIP. So staff has been working, getting various vendors, some information from them. We'll be looking at doing a hands-on demonstration of 3 of them, hopefully soon, within the next month or so. And the idea is to get something set up and get our ETIP in order for the next TIP funding program cycle, 27 through 30. We're anticipating that will start in May of next year. So we have a lot of work to do between now and then. And the idea is to get the consultant on board, get the program up and running, get you guys to review it and make sure you're okay with it. It has to go through the purchasing process at the Muni. So we have to do all that RFP and all that kind of stuff. So this is not the last time you'll be hearing of this. Task 220, $50,000 is being programmed for the local transportation planning coordination. We've been expending a good amount of money for our local coordination for the few staff that's still left at AMATS. And we need some additional money in there to help ensure that we don't have any cost overruns. Same with task 260, freight mobility. A lot of work was done because of our continued work with the freight community, research into the freight mobility study updates, and then some additional refinement of how are we going to move forward with the congestion management process and the freight component. Next task is 290, 100,000 is programmed for the congestion management process. As was noted in the 2023 certification review from AMATS, our congestion management process is outdated and we need to work as quickly as possible to get it updated. I believe it's almost 10 years old at this point. So we need to get it. The CMP is taking a look at our system, taking a look at our congestion, and how are we going to manage it. in the name, but I figured I'd explain it. And it's through other things besides single occupancy vehicle programs. So it could be like TSMO, TDM, or other things like that. So it is a requirement of us as a medium to large MPO. So this 100,000 is there not to do the update itself, but to hire a consultant to help manage the update itself. AMATS is still only 2 staff members, myself and Christine, and we are tapped with all the other projects we have going on, plans, but the CMP is a federally required one and we need to get it done as soon as possible. So we're doing what we can. So this 100,000 will help get a consultant on board to oversee the money that's in the tip right now to get that update going. We anticipate that'll take a couple of years to complete. 250,799 is programmed into task 410, traffic and transportation data. This is support that's given to us by the traffic department. Typically, we rely on them for traffic counts and other efforts like that, doing before and after project counts. So putting some additional funding in there. And then task 532 for public involvement and outreach. 38,000 is programmed to help with the public input license renewal. Public input is our outreach tool, and additional outreach efforts that I mentioned earlier about the AMATS 101 videos. So those were the original tasks that were brought through the TAC. However, staff has edits because last minute things come up as always. So before you in the physical copy are the edits. Look, would you go ahead and switch over to the, not that, yeah, the second one if you could. Okay. So this is a lot here, but I'm trying to get through it as quick as I can. So this week, the Vision Zero Task Force met, and that's a task force between the Municipality of Anchorage, Department of Transportation, and AMATS participates on it, which we're grateful of. That group is doing a lot of good work. And one of the things that was mentioned there is that there's pretty limited staff time at the Department of Transportation and the Municipality of Anchorage, and it may impact some of the efforts that that task force is recommending. One such effort is the pilot projects that were being looked at for lane reductions on various roads throughout the AMATS area. So for example, what was done on 6th, thank you, 6th Avenue over the summer where there was a lane reduction and it was turned into a bike lane to see what are the impacts on that road. The idea is to do other such projects elsewhere to see what kind of impacts there are. Basically, get as much information together before some kind of decision is made on how to move forward with or without a lane reduction.
Which line item was that?
Oh, sorry, I'm getting
sorry.
So nobody else really seems to have the capacity. So, and we have some additional money available. So I recommended that AMATS step up and get a consultant on board to help with the planning side of things with those pilot projects. I emphasize it again, this is only for the planning side. We cannot do the construction, we cannot do the purchasing of materials, we can't lay things out on the road. We can only do the public outreach and other planning related efforts. But that's a costly one. So the idea here is to get a consultant on board through a term contract to help us with 2 projects, one for INL for a pilot project there, and one for Northern Lights Boulevard. And AMATS, ironically, also has projects on there that's being funded. One, a pavement project on INL, and then a non-motorized pavement or non-motorized replacement project on Northern Lights. So everything's kind of aligning here by having AMATS kind of help and assist with this. So staff's recommending moving some funding around to help cover this cost, which we're anticipating will be about $300,000 for the 2 projects. So staff is, sorry, I'll switch to my thing. So first, we would recommend moving all of the additional money we added to 410, which is $250,799 from 410 to 532, which is public involvement and outreach, and move that into contractual services. Then from task 220, which is the local transportation planning coordination. So we added 50,000. Instead of 50,000, we do 25,000 and move 25 to task 532. And then on task 260, we were originally going to add 50,000 there for the freight mobility effort. Instead, only do 25,000 in the freight mobility and then other 25,000 to 532. So the total would be 300,799 added to 532 under contractual services. And that effort can help us get a term contract consultant on board to assist with that public engagement. So these edits are brought to you to see if you agree with them or not. Just note that a lot of work still has to be done before we can hit the ground running on this. So the idea is to move as fast as possible since we have projects out there already. We'd like to get this started ASAP. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
I have two. Sorry. The first one, I wonder on the shifting funding from 410, it seems like that implicates the traffic department. Did you talk with the traffic department about impacts of that shift before moving the funding?
No, because I didn't talk to them about the additional funding we were adding. So they're not being impacted in any way. This was all additional money that they hadn't planned on to begin with.
Is it appropriate to ask the traffic department
If you would like, sir.
if they have any concerns about that shift?
Yeah, Brad Craig, traffic engineer. Being able to do the pilot projects and the benefit that those have a greater benefit to the traffic safety of our city than additional. I mean, before and after, we would love what funding could be provided for that, but if it's decided between those two, we would lean towards the lane reduction pilot project to capacity.
And is it, so I guess actually now I have three questions. The second question is, the next procedural steps, this body approves this, then it moves to the assembly for approval?
Yes, any amendments that we do have to go through. No, sorry. There's a lot. No, your guys' approval is final. It would have to go to the assembly for appropriation as part of the municipal process, but there's no additional steps for AMATS after this. This would be final approval by you guys. Then we get the funds appropriated through the assembly municipal process and make it available for use.
Okay. And then I guess third question. I know, Aaron, you have a staff of 2 and fully staffed is 5. And some of this funding is, I think, assuming you have a fully staffed 5. But maybe to get to 5, we need to make changes. Is that something that will have to come back to us if we do need to make changes? Or do you have preliminary thoughts about what that might look like?
Yes, it's been an interesting adventure advertising the positions. We have had some applicants who have applied, we've offered, and they've turned it down because it's not enough money. And we have not been having a lot of success at our senior planner positions. That have been a lot less people interested in those positions. And so it's been the associate planner that we set up, and we're limited on how much we can offer by the municipality of Anchorage, because we are within the muni and we have to adhere to their processes. And so we have a threshold of how high we can go on our positions and how much we pay for it. An incentive was always to offer more money. We just don't have that flexibility. We have more money, we just can't. And so I don't really know what's going to solve the problem, I'll be honest. It's a new one on me, and a lot of departments are having similar issues with staffing. I think it's pretty common nationwide right now. So we're going to keep doing our best and see what we got. I will note, I forgot to mention, if we don't fully use all of the funding that you see here, it goes back into a pool of funding that the Department of Transportation has been very generous at working with the MPOs on keeping it in that MPO funding pool. And if additional needs come out in future years, we can request for some additional money above and beyond our normal amount. So say we had 100,000 left over that we didn't use, that would go back. And then us or the other MPOs could be like, hey, we need 50,000 of that to help with an effort. And then we'd sit down with the MPOs and DOT and work through that to see yay or nay on that decision. So it won't be lost is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Questions, comments from the committee? Seeing any, how about from the public? Any comments or questions from the public? Not seeing any. What's the will of the committee?
I move to approve the edited plan.
Second.
Mr. Downey, seconded by Dr. Boland, I think I will just go to, are there any objections to approving the motion? Not hearing any, the plan is approved. That brings us to committee comments. Does the committee have any comments that they'd like to add today? From me? Not hearing any. So that brings us to item number 8, which is public comments. Are there any comments from the public? Not seeing any. So we move to adjournment. We have a motion.
So moved. Second.
By Dr. Boland, seconded by Mr. Littlefield, and I bet I will hear no objections to that motion. For adjourn. That's like 2:21.
Thank you.